Good morning, Unity of Palm Harbor. Woo! You thought you were going to sleep today. No, we are alive, awake, and we are happening. And we have a very, very special guest with us today. In the front row, Lynn Principe Golden is going to share the stage with me today. And I want you to give her a nice, warm welcome. Sometimes we come up here and we teach. Sometimes we come up here and we inform, and sometimes we come up here and we ask the hard questions. And in the month of June, the theme is asking the hard questions with love. And that means sometimes we get a little uncomfortable about certain subjects that might feel, why do you talk about that in church? Well, why wouldn't we talk about that in church? This is our home. This is our family, and we care for one another. And in doing that, we open up a variety of topics. Sometimes it's from our wonderful mentors and founders, the Fillmores. Sometimes it's from other master teachers. And sometimes it's what each one of us is facing in our daily life. And so that's why I'm especially pleased that I met Lynn through our friend Deanna Gray, who does our yoga now. She's come back in once a month. And to do these sort of things just makes us more aware, informed, and we can make educated decisions about where we want to go with our lives. Our consciousness, uplifting our consciousness, that's part of our goal right here on the planet Earth in this incarnation. So before we get started with our music, I'd like to recognize anyone with a June birthday. Does anybody in our audience have a June birthday? Oh, I'm seeing some fingers, and I know there's Mr. Rob in the back. So if we could, when the music team gets up here, they can sing the happy birthday. Is that okay? Okay, and without further ado, we'll go to our music team.
That's all right.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear everybody. Happy birthday to you. Hey!
And now, won't you please stand and join us in singing Joy in My Heart?
I got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Down in my heart. Down in my heart, I got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Down in my heart to say, and I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart. And I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart. I've got the peace that passeth understanding down in my heart. Down in my heart. Down in my heart. I've got the peace that passeth understanding down in my heart. Down in my heart to stay. And I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart. And I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart. I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Down in my heart. Down in my heart. I got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Down in my heart to say.
Beautiful.
Nice job.
You may be seated. Thank you.
Michelle's been reminding me to tell you that I write most of these songs. So basically 95% of what you hear is my stuff. So what I'll just do is tell you when it's not my stuff. That last song was not mine. So. And I'm very grateful that you guys allow me to express my creative pursuit with you. So this one's called So Good to See You Again.
And it is.
So good to see you again. Our timeless connection and loving affection reminds me of why we are friends. There's something about the way we share and show each other how we care. Happy to be with you, so good to see you again. So let's take it in and savor this moment. Who knows what tomorrow may bring? There's something in you that brings out the best in me. Somehow I like who I am even more when I'm in your company. I felt it since the moment you came, and I really hope that you feel the same. Happy to be with you, so good to see you again. So let's take it in and savor this moment. Who knows what tomorrow may bring? But we have right now the only time we've ever had. Make sure to say what you feel. It's so surreal the way it feels. I can only describe it as love. Let's take it in, savor this moment. Who knows what tomorrow may bring? But we have right now the only time we've ever had. Make sure to say what you feel.
Thank you.
And if we're taking credit, I have to admit that I write all the announcements. And our first announcement, of course, is about our beautiful flowers this morning, arranged by Judith Overcash. They're dedicated by Myrna Quevedo in memory of her mom, Aurora. And I didn't see her here. She's here somewhere. There she is. And Wednesday night, this coming Wednesday, is the second Wednesday, and so Laura Lee will be here teaching Tai Chi. And flyers are on the table for all of our Wednesday night activities, so be sure to pick one up. We have, of course, our special guest this morning joining Reverend Tracey on the stage, and she's also going to be doing a 6-week class for the end of life activities, if you will, and it begins June the 23rd. You can sign up in the foyer. There's a limit of 12, so if you want to get in this class, and I'm sure you will after you hear Lynn speak. Then Charlie Thweet will be coming here from Connecticut to share his music and his message on July the 11th, and he's also going to present his love, if you will, for A Course of Miracles in a workshop on the 12th. So that sign-up sheet is also in the foyer, and you can pay in the bookstore for those activities. And now our daily word reader is Greg Aiken, and he will be up here sharing the word with us.
Good morning, everybody. Good to see everybody this morning. Beautiful morning here at Unity of Palm Harbor. And let's just take a deep breath. I love my breaths, you know. Take a deep breath way up high into your shoulders. Breathe out. And the daily word today is healing. My thoughts, words, and actions affirm divine life. Today I give thanks for the constant activity of divine healing life, especially when my body is experiencing illness. To bolster my awareness of my capacity for healing, I place my attention on my inherent wholeness. I affirm life in my thoughts, my words, and my actions as I care for my body and meet its needs. My faith assures me that illness is not the truth of me, nor is it my enduring reality. Through my actions, I am affirming wholeness as my true nature and encouraging my healing. Even when I am not facing illness, I greet each day by blessing my body, affirming my wholeness and the ongoing activity of divine life in every organ and every cell. I give thanks for the gift of divine life by giving thanks for my healing and living joyously. He said to me, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace." Luke 8:48.
If this is my last song, if this is my final day, if tomorrow I'll be gone, what do I want to say? If this is my last song, if it's my time to go, when my body's moved on, what will I have to show? Oh, but fortune and fame, they scatter to the wind. Things that make a name just don't matter in the end. But is the world a little more peaceful? Oceans and sky a little more blue? Is humankind a little bit wiser about the things that we can do? Does the sun shine a little bit brighter where before there was only rain? If so, then I'm glad I came. If these are my last words for all of the world to hear, if all that I have ever been is about to disappear, if these are my last words, there's nothing that I need to say. I have only tried to serve. It's never been about talking anyway. So much hurt there is to heal, it's hard to understand. All that I can hope to feel is that I'm doing what I can. But is the world a little more peaceful? Oceans and the sky a little more blue? Is humankind a little bit wiser about the good that we can do? Does the sun shine a little bit brighter where before there was only rain? If so, then I'm glad I came. Has a child been helped and a hungry soul been fed? Has somebody stood a little taller cause of something that I've said? Have I left a little kindness? Have I eased a little pain? If so, then I'm glad I came. For that, I'm so glad I came. If this is my last song, what do I leave behind? What do I pass on? If I am out of time.
That was perfect. Just perfect. If you knew that you only had 2 hours to live, what would you do? If you knew you only had 3 months to live, what would you do? I'd like to open with a passage from Khalil Gibran. And they say, "Teacher, tell us about death." And this is what he says. "You would know the secret of death, and how shall you find it unless you seek it in the heart of life? The owl, whose night-bound eyes are blind unto the day, cannot unveil the mystery of light. If you would indeed behold the spirit of death, open your heart wide unto the body of life. For life and death are one, even as the river and the sea are one. In the depth of your hopes and desires lies your silent knowledge of the beyond. And like seeds dreaming beneath the snow, your heart dreams of spring. Trust the dreams, for in them is hidden the gate to eternity. For what is it to die but to stand naked in the wind and to melt in the sun? And what is it to cease breathing but to free the breath from its restless tides, that it may rise and expand and seek God unencumbered? Only when you drink from the river of silence shall you indeed sing. And when you have reached the mountaintop, then you shall begin to climb. And when the earth shall claim your limbs, then you shall truly dance." Thank you, Joy. That was perfect. Thank you. So I would like to introduce to you someone, and you may not even know this concept. You all know that I entered ministerial school about 4 years ago, and the idea of a doula was introduced to me. Now, I understood what a birth doula is. She helps assist as a new life is coming into the world. And that is a miracle. So how would it feel if we looked at life as it's exiting this physical existence also as a miracle? Well, those miracle workers are called death doulas, celebration of life doulas, end of life doulas. And I'm going to invite Lynn to come join me on the stage as we take a little journey with you this morning and tell you what a death doula does. Lynn? Again, with something very easy. What does a death doula do?
Okay, not easy.
Okay.
Like you said, we talk about birth doulas. So a death doula is really on the other bookend of life. We offer non-medical care. The short version is non-medical care. We're emotional support. We're an advocate for your end-of-life wishes. We help everyone get on the same page as far as family members go. And we're there for grief support as well.
Yeah.
So ideally, in a little bit longer version, I like to work with people when they have a few months of life, maybe they have a terminal diagnosis, and we identify the things in their lives that feel unfinished in different domains and help them to complete things, create a vision map per se. And then also there's the sitting bedside vigil. That's something that doulas do. And then we're there for the after-death care, helping them get to their final resting place, and there for grief support as well. So really 3 parts.
When I met Lynn, I could feel that she's got this sweet, gentle energy that can just encompass all that comes before her. And it's a learning process for each one of us. But one of the questions I asked her, as it's been approached to me in my office, I don't know how to die. I don't know how to die. And maybe you could help us. I'm sure you've received that question.
Not so much, but something I've thought about. I believe that our bodies have a wisdom that we maybe forgot. We forgot how to be with one another through the dying process. And I think that people talk about this movement being a new thing, but really it's remembering that we all know how to be in community. We know how to be with one another through that process. People are starting to have more home funerals, home vigils, and we're getting back to knowing how to be with one another through those times.
There's a book that Lynn suggested I get, and we just happen to have it in our bookstore. Advice for Future Corpses, a practical perspective on death and dying. Advice for future corpses. Because we're not going to get out of here alive. So what do you think this book takes us through? A little bit of a journey, and that question I asked, that a member asked me, I don't know how to die. And they said, look at it as if you're taking a spiritual journey. If you were taking a spiritual journey, what might you do? Well, you might educate yourself as to what the process might be like. When I was doing my internship at a hospital, and I worked mostly with the children, the babies that were maybe not going to thrive, it was very shocking to me to see the change in color. But what was really beautiful to me was to see the family outpouring, coming together, grandmothers, aunts, uncles, best friends, holding that sacred space. And I'm imagining that's what a doula does, holding that sacred space, allowing you to express everything that you might need and want to express. So I opened our talk with saying what needs to be said. Saying what needs to be said. I know in my personal journey, my mother had a diagnosis and she outlived it 5.5 years. And you would think over a period of time, we all knew what was going to happen. Yet at the time it actually happened, there is a grief process that is shocking to the cellular structure of the body. At least that was true for me. And there were times that I forgot hair appointments. And I forgot this, and time didn't seem real. And I was in between worlds. And I wondered if maybe you could address some of that.
Address what happens with the grief process?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I think grief forever changes us. I mentioned a book this morning. It's called The Wild Edge of Sorrow by Francis Weller. And he talks about grief. We all understand the grief of losing ones that we love. But there are other types of grief, and we've experienced a lot of this as communities worldwide with COVID. There has been difficulty in expressing that grief, and it's something that even you might feel and not even name because it's everywhere right now. The other types of grief are ancestral grief, grief that we carry in our DNA, in our bodies. There's the grief of not having what we expected, not having the love or the life or the relationships that we thought we were meant to have but didn't have. So the grief can be very complex. And I know that it changes you forever. Perhaps it's like a river rushing through, and eventually the flowers will grow. But you're always going to be really on that path, and grief will be your companion. I think I do funeral services, and something that I often say is that it's a path not meant to be walked alone. And knowing how to be with one another in grief, we spoke about this a little bit, is very difficult because who knows what to say, right? We've all had people say to us, well, they're in a better place, or they had a nice long life, or you can have more children. All of those things of well-meaning people. But often what we all need is just someone to just be present.
Yeah, that's something we talked about before the service today. When I had a diagnosis, a medical diagnosis, and people went, oh, it's going to be okay. Everything's going to be fine. Well, the truth of that is we don't know if it was going to be okay. We didn't know if it was going to be fine. And that's challenging to hear something that you don't know if it's going to be true or not. So for me, it was much more meaningful for someone to sit beside me and just sit with me. Let me tell my story or no story. And I think that's true for a lot of people going through a hardship, whether it's life-threatening or not. That we don't want to be fixed. We don't want to be told how we're supposed to respond. And we know it's complicated. Life is complicated. Death is complicated. So how about being that full presence with someone going through a challenging time, and sometimes the silence is perfect. You just need to know someone's there. Like you said, that you're not going through this alone. Do you remember the first time that maybe death came into your life? And for many of us, it was as a child. And for me, back in the 70s, 80s, we didn't talk about it. Nobody talked about it. And so what does a child think? Shh, it's a forbidden subject. How do we treat death as a part of life? I think the Native Americans get it right when they talk about a circle of life, when they honor the ancestors. Many of you know that my daughter was in teaching in South Korea for 5 years. And ancestral worship is a real part of their lives. And you can see on the hillsides, as you're going out into the country, all these little markers. And often they bring maybe flowers or fruit, and they have ceremonies honoring the ancestors. What is it, November 2nd, Day of the Dead? Right? That's a cultural thing, to honor the ancestors, so that we are not putting aside something that is also a part of our life, and that maybe we can come to a place that we can honor those who went before us, because we are a little bit of all of that.
Yes, and I'd love to talk a little bit more about children and death.
Yeah.
I think that we don't realize what they're capable of, so we don't talk to them about it. Because people often ask me, when is a good time to talk about end of life? And I think there's never a bad time. I'm fun at dinner parties, but eventually this conversation always comes back to death for me. I'm nosy maybe, and I'm curious. I have a curious mind. I want to know, what do you think and what do you want? I had a client last year, a young man, 40s, who was dying of a brain tumor. He had 2 young children. They were 5 and 8 years old. He was well aware that his life was ending, and he and his wife had decided to not hide any part of it from their children. They were there with him as he died at home, and I was there sitting at his bedside reading his favorite stories with his wife and giving her support, and we had candles lit and his favorite music playing and all the things that we do for a vigil. And so it was a beautiful, peaceful place. The children felt welcome to come in the room and leave, give him a kiss, run back out. And then the day that he died, his body was prepared, cleaned, he had beautiful clothing on. And when I came over, the children and his wife had covered his whole body with flowers. And they were talking to him and kissing his hands, and we did a blessing ritual together. So I gave each of the children a little handful of essential oils, and they stood on one side of the bed each, and as I read through the anointing blessing of the body, they anointed their father's body together. And afterwards, they both read some stories and poems and thanked him for being the best dad ever. And I thought, by him dying consciously, but dying, we would say dying well, that their ideas and their views of death will be forever changed. And what a legacy that he left them by including them in the process and seeing that, of course, and sadness is a huge part of it, and that's okay. They felt welcome to express whatever emotion was coming up. And I think that as they grow and as they have their own children, it's a legacy that he left behind.
I like that you said forever changed. Just happens over the weekend, I was watching a Netflix movie, and the scene is set where the elderly father is passing. And you can tell by previous scenes that he's been really difficult to live with. And he has 2 sons, and one of the sons is married. And Kate Hudson plays the daughter-in-law, the wife of one of the sons. And she's standing at the window of the hospital room, and he's in and out of consciousness. And she's just watching out the window, and he becomes lucid, and he looks at her and he says, of all the people who would be here, I'm surprised you're here. And she said, you may not know this, but when my sister passed away, you were so visibly present for me. And I wanted to share a couple things that she said, because the line's pretty important. You said nothing in life will call upon us to be more courageous than facing the fact that it ends. But on the other side of heartbreak is wisdom. The wisdom that came up for me was the things left unsaid stay with us forever. I wish I could tell my sister how much I loved her, how much I idolized her, but we never said those things. We just weren't like that. And suddenly one day she was gone, and I have all these things to say, but no one to say them to. And the father-in-law says to her, both of my boys know how I feel. And Kate Hudson says, are you sure, Gabe? Your boys will remember this time for the rest of their lives. It will shape who they are as men, which I think is exactly what you were addressing. However we approach death, however we are present or not, for those important people passing in and through our lives, how we react to it, what we say, what we don't say, we will be forever changed in that moment. What do you think?
I love that. It makes me think about the question I get most often when I tell people what I do. They always ask, well, isn't that sad? Isn't that depressing? And I have to say that it is life-affirming, because by taking this deep dive into thinking about end of life and what feels incomplete, and helping people find completion in, their physical life, mentally, legacy work, emotionally, spiritually, and then practical matters. Imagine having completion in all of those domains of life, how that would inform the way you live. So the time, and I loved the line that one of the last lines of your song, you said something about, and maybe you could repeat it, something about the time we have now.
Now is the only time we'll ever have.
Yes.
Make sure to say how you feel.
Right. So it's
Will
a
you repeat
reminder.
that so everybody can hear it?
Right now is all the time that we have. Yes.
It's the only time we'll ever have.
It's the only time we'll ever have.
And make sure you say what you feel.
Make sure you say what you feel. And so working with death as my teacher has taught me to do that. I feel really grateful to do this work for that reason, because it has taught me a lot about what matters. And when I'm able to help other people figure that out for themselves, that it's really worthwhile.
So I did have a diagnosis once upon a time, about 8 years ago, and it made me catch my breath. And I called my aunt, one of my favorite people, and I said in a moment of despair, is this all the time I get? And she cried with me on the phone. And what it did is wake my derriere up. If you're not doing what you're meant to be doing, what are you waiting for? Now that's kind of fun and humorous now, but at the time I really thought, wow, what did I come to this earth path to learn and do and create? And I had done some really fabulous things, but it wasn't soul feeding. It fed my family, allowed me to travel, built a nice house. But what was the impact that I was making that you had ever met me, that we had ever shared time together? So it took a little nudge for me to say, all right, girl, and I went to an astrologer. But anyways, and then I went off to Unity Village. You guys know the story. I watched my minister be ordained, and I was so proud of him. And as I'm sitting in the 12-power prayer garden, after receiving this, come apart for a while. Honey, it all came apart after that. Everything in my life shifted. And I have to say, gloriously. So sometimes we need a wake-up call. I don't advise that scary of a wake-up call, but sometimes those of us who are very rigid or stuck, or we think we got it. We think we got it, but you haven't done it yet. You're just now being groomed for the biggest, most glorious part of your life. And open that gift. Open that gift. What is it that I'm meant to do? What is my second half? What is my third half? What have I come here to do? What makes my heart sing? What joy am I going to embrace as I travel this journey with you? And maybe if that diagnosis had never happened, I just would have carried on doing what I was doing. And it was fine, but it wasn't life fulfilling. So sometimes in death, in an opportunity to look at what does the rest of our life look like, we take that jewel, we take that nugget, and we say, yes, I am here, Lord. I am here. Do with me your will, not mine, but thine. And I think that's a universal power, beauty and grace, nurturing, empathy, caring, and opening that heart space wider than you may have ever imagined before.
Yes, I love that. There's a line in a book called Die Wise by Stephen Jenkinson, and he says, our more time is now. Many people, when they are ill and they maybe have an illness that they're throwing everything in the book at it, I think there are times when the quality of life suffers greatly because they all want more time. And what he says is our more time is now. So every day is our more time. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So embrace it. Every day is our more time. What we want to create is right here in front of us. It's for us to grab it by the reins and say, yes. And that's why I think a celebration of life is what we call it in Unity, is like the true celebration of life, even from the birth moment. I love your story of the father with the children putting all the flowers on them. What do we do oftentimes when we're blessing a brand new baby in the community? We often don't use water in Unity. We use rose petals, red rose petals, the form of life, of love, of something to celebrate. And what would it feel like if we do that at the end of life as well? That it is a holy, sacred journey.
Right. He also says, besides our more time is now, he says that death is not a failure of medicine.
Well, a lot of doctors don't like that, right?
Right.
They want to keep going and keep going and keep going. And at what point do you say, I don't want to sleep on drugs all the time? I'm ready to let go. I'm ready to let go. And the celebration of that, the ceremony of that, the rituals that you help create. Before we end, give them a little snippet about what we'll do in a class together for 6 weeks.
Okay. I'm offering a class starting June 23rd. It's called The Best 3 Months. So the first day I will tell you what your death date will be. So it will be 3 months from the first date of our class, and we will work on the premise that we have 3 months to live. Each week we're going to take a different domain of life. We'll create, after some meditation, some discussion, we will create a vision for what we want in that domain of life. Say emotionally. Say if your vision is to have healing and forgiveness for some siblings that you don't talk to anymore. We'll then create action steps that are measurable so that that vision is completed. And I will say, and by when do you plan on doing X, Y, Z?
Wow, big heart stuff, guys.
Yes. So the 5 domains of life, we'll take one each week. The first week, we'll just get to know one another, maybe do some journaling, meditation. The first week, and I haven't decided, sometimes I like to just see what feels like the right thing to start with, but we'll do the physical domain. So that's, how do you want to be cared for? Where do you want to die? What kind of pain medication do you want? Who do you want there? Who do you not want there? What music do you want playing? All of these things. The next domain will be the spiritual domain. So what's unfinished there? What spiritual pursuits do you still want to want to find out about, what needs to be healed between you and your Creator. The emotional domain, this is the hardest one for most of us. So what relationships need forgiveness? Maybe there's someone you need to ask forgiveness of. So in what relationships do you want to focus your last days on? Then we have legacy work, so mentally, how do you want to be remembered? What significant things in your life have made your life have the most meaning? And then lastly, the practical domain. And this is a little bit more like our typical planning that we do. I'll be asking, what's your final resting place? What kind of ceremony do you want? Do you know what songs you want there? Who's going to be doing the ceremonies? Do you know what your options are? So those are hard questions, but powerful, very powerful work.
Well, and we've been talking about a little field trip.
Yes.
So will you tell them just a little bit about that?
Yeah, so there is, and most people don't realize that we have a green burial in our area. It's in Odessa. It's called the Heartwood Preserve. It's part of the Starkey land, and it is a land preserve and a green burial site. And it's a beautiful wooded property where they do green burials, which means that bodies are not embalmed, so you're in natural state, or you are cremated, maybe wrapped in a shroud or a wicker basket, or a natural pine box. But you're buried under the trees, you're buried within all of the beautiful wildlife. And the people that run it are just lovely. So it's a nice place, and everyone's welcome to just go and walk around through the property. So that might be a field trip that we'll do in our course.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, as we're going to close out this little segment, I'd like us to go into prayer, and I'm going to ask Terrell to come up and do his pan drum, and then I'm going to leave the stage and allow them to take you through a beautiful ceremonial meditation. So let's just, at this moment, if you will, close those outer eyes. And just take in all that we have heard right here on the stage, and know that you are in the right and perfect place of wisdom. That each one of us holds a wisdom within our bodies, and we know how to do what we know how to do, and all else will be revealed. We know that coming together in this sacred place, this sanctuary right here at Unity of Palm Harbor, we learn, we express, we give back to each other. And with this, we are so grateful for each person that shows up, each person who is listening here now, as Spirit comes in and through each one of us as the divine expression. As the divine expression. And we're asking Terrell to come up here and be a part of this right now. And so it is, and so we let it be. Amen.
Before we begin with the drumming, I'm going to ask everyone to sit with their back against the back of the seat, maybe both feet down, flat on the floor. And if you could bring your right hand to your lower belly. So the thumb is reaching up towards the belly button, the pinky's reaching down, and just let your belly fall into your hand. This is often a place that we're holding on tight, so in this instance, I want you to let it go with an exhale, releasing the lower body. You're welcome to close your eyes if you wish. Feel that letting go and the space created with your breath. Your next inhale, imagine that breath coming up into the center of your body, expanding the rib cage, expanding the diaphragm, connecting the lower belly to the center of the body. Deep breaths here. And your next inhale invites you to bring your left hand, place it over your heart. This vibrant, vital organ that brings new life into our cells. Feel your breath reaching all the way up into your collarbones, connecting the lower body with our middle, our center of will, of doing, up into the heart space, this place of love and curiosity. As you open your eyes, maybe gaze out the window, take in the natural light. This light that's such a gift to us each day. This light that connects us, it warms us. Reminds us that we're exactly where we need to be. One more inhale, and then exhale together with a sigh. So I'm going to be taking you through a practice we call the Pono Pono. This is an ancient Hawaiian practice of forgiveness. So forgiveness is a big word, and it can mean many things. Sometimes it's relationship. Perhaps it's forgiving ourselves. It's forgiving thoughts that no longer serve us. Anything that we're ready to let go of. I've begun to think of emotions as coming to us. They all have a job to do. As well as relationships. Sometimes relationships can be difficult or painful. But if you step back, sometimes you can think about, why is this here? What is it meant to teach me? What is this illness meant to teach me? So with that in mind, as we begin drumming, I'm going to ask you to think about a relationship you have with yourself, maybe a relationship you have with someone else, living or dead, perhaps a thought, a limiting belief that you're ready to release. And as you connect again with that deep breath that we were doing, just hold that thought, those feelings for a few breaths. Think about that relationship. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. Goodbye. Practice move through you and release what's meant to be released with gratitude.
And so it is, and so we let it be. Thank you so much, Lynn. That was absolutely beautiful.
All right, we're going to slowly bring you back. Let's walk the higher path. Let's talk about the higher path. Let's rise to be the best we can and be lifted on the wings of love. Let's walk the higher path. Let's talk about the higher path. Let's rise to be the best we can and be lifted on the wings of love. Every day we get the chance to be what we know in our hearts we want to see. Every choice an opportunity to be lifted on the wings of love. Let's walk the higher path. Let's talk about the higher path. Let's rise to be the best we can and be lifted on the wings of love. Have you heard? The kingdom is here within, so we know where to look. So let's begin. Set our intention for a higher course and be lifted on the wings of love. So let's walk the higher path. Let's talk about the higher path. Let's rise to be the best we can and be lifted on the wings of love. If you want help with this life that we are living, I am with you always is the promise we are giving. Just get started, seek and you will find and be lifted on the wings of love. Chance to be what we know in our hearts we want to see. Every choice an opportunity to be lifted on the wings of love. So let's walk the higher path. Let's talk about the higher path. Let's rise to be the best we can and be lifted on the wings of love. One more time. Let's walk the higher path. Let's talk about the higher path. Let's rise to be the best we can and be lifted on the wings of love.
Thank you.
Well, this is the time when we share our tithes and our offerings with this ministry. And for those joining us online, we invite you to go either to PayPal or visit our website, unityofpalmharbor.org. and you can make a donation there, or you can call our office and get set up for consistent giving with Luann. And for those of you in attendance here, we welcome you to make a debit or credit card donation in our bookstore, or drop your check or cash there in the blue bags by the doors. And we so bless you and appreciate your generosity. And so now we're going to bless our offerings. Do we have the slide? All right. This perfect gift is spirit in form, circulating and blessing all it touches. Freely I give, and joyously I receive, grateful for all my blessings. And so it is. Thank you.
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as creator, family all are we. Let us walk with each other